Oh, David Montgomery. Ah! Not started in a lot of leagues. Only 40% of CBS managers started David Montgomery. 3 touchdowns, 121 yards, 32 carries. And what is going on with Jahmyr Gibbs? People are a little worried about it, and I get it. Welcome to the show. We'll recap the Lions and the Packers. Lions with a resounding victory to improve to 3-1. We're going to take a look at 7 NFC home games. Denver at Chicago, Minnesota at Carolina, Seattle at the Giants, Tampa Bay at New Orleans, New England at Dallas, Washington at Philadelphia, Arizona at San Francisco. Try to help you beat the waiver wire too. Last week we told you to go pick up Devon Achane. Hopefully you listened, and we'll talk about him a little bit later. Anyway, Detroit 34 and Green Bay 20. Okay, is there any doubt in your mind that David Montgomery will be the best fantasy running back for the Lions rest of season?
Not really, no.
Slight doubt, but it's hard to bet against it right now.
I mean, what would slow him down at this point besides injury?
That's really it, and unless they decide that they want to get a little bit more juice in the passing game out of that position. But here's the thing that bothered me about this. When the game was completely decided, and he's coming off a thigh injury, and he's already gotten 28 carries at this point. Like, what are they doing? Why are they trying to get him hurt again?
Right, we couldn't get a little bit of garbage time there for our boy Jahmyr Gibbs. Well, Montgomery must start, right? I mean, this must start at this point.
Next games are against the Panthers, Bucks, Ravens, and Raiders.
He's the start of the week in week 5.
Yeah, I don't care. I don't care about the tough matchups. This offensive line is strong. He's good. By all means, keep him in your lineup.
And the offensive line isn't even fully healthy right now.
Oh, that's the craziest part.
And what about Gibbs? What are we doing with Gibbs?
You hold and then just hope that they start to give him a little bit more work as the season goes on. You know, I mean, I just don't understand. Like, why spend the draft pick on him? Like, what, they were fist pumping and high fiving and so excited that they got him. And I mean, by all accounts, we said this on draft night. Like, you reached a little bit. Like, you know, I mean, maybe it's a first round talent. If you really wanted him, I'm sure you could have traded down. But like, why not use him more? Why?
Well, I mean, we could say that about a bunch of rookies that were taken in the first round that went to curious landing spots. We could say that about JSN. We could say that about Quentin Johnson. Sometimes these guys just aren't ready to be let loose. And not only is Gibbs not necessarily ready to not be let loose, but they don't have to. Right. They love what they're getting out of David Montgomery. So I unfortunately think it means that Jahmyr Gibbs is just going to have to be parked. Bye-week running back, obvious replacement for David Montgomery. If you're the Montgomery manager, you could try trading for Gibbs, but you're going to have to give up more than you'd want. I just think you've got to hold him. I think you were right. There's no reason. You're never going to cut him, and you're not going to feel good starting him unless Montgomery's out.
How about this as we move on to a different topic? Romeo Doubs has scored 18 or more PPR fantasy points in 3 of 4 games. Mm-hmm. What a quietly awesome season. And week 2, he was terrible. But other than that, 18 or more in 3 of 4 games. Watson comes back last night, has the touchdown, thankfully.
You got so lucky if you started him.
I mean, not really, because that still wasn't a very good game. But yes.
But like the expectations were low to begin with. Yeah. He should have had like just the 1 catch, and that was it.
Right. All right. So let's talk about the Packers. Did anything change in your mind in terms of how you evaluate the Packers offense rest of season based on yesterday?
I mean, the offensive line is definitely a problem for everything. You know, Jordan Love was running for his life, and they couldn't get the run game going by any stretch. I mean, granted, when they're down, 14-3 in the first quarter, that wasn't exactly a promising situation to run the ball. But I think there's a good buy low opportunity for Aaron Jones, because it's been 2 missed games and now a bad game. And so if the Jones fantasy manager is struggling a little bit, 1-3 after this week, 0-4, maybe looking to acquire something in return that could help, that particular person. So I think it's just a matter of be patient with him in particular, and be patient with Christian Watson. Like Dave said, you got lucky with the touchdown reception, but there are better things to come for him, now that he should have extra time to get ready for that week 5 game. But Romeo Doubs, I think, is weekly starter in 3 receiver leagues until proven otherwise.
Doubs is that dude for Green Bay, and he might even be better than a number 3 receiver as we move forward. But Love, that's the guy that he's got his best timing with, and he's making great plays, and he should have had more great plays. But I mean, Love was just totally dysfunctional. The Packers offense in the first half, totally dysfunctional. There were so many plays where Love was like, he didn't care about the pass rush. And you love to see that ignorance from quarterbacks, but the play designs were terrible. They would only have like 2 receivers downfield. Everybody else is blocking. Of course, the Lions were playing zone, so they weren't going to be able to connect on those plays. Some positives for Love. He had his highest completion rate on the season, 64%. His ADOT was 9.5. That's actually his second lowest, but that's still above league average. His off-target rate, 11.1%. That was his best of the season. I still think that there's some good in him. He just needs to cut down. He's doing this weird thing when he throws where he like puts too much of his body into it. And I think passes are sailing on him a little. And that's, contributing to the off-target throws. And he's still just a little bit late on some of the throws. We talked about that during the preseason. But he loves going long. And the Packers try to like help him make that happen. And we still saw that in the game, even against heavy zone coverage. He's throwing it deep into tight windows. He's doing a good job with it. You really should have gotten more than 19 fantasy points out of him when it was all said and done. And they play Las Vegas next week. You're going to love your Packers next week against the Raiders.
Oh, pun intended. Okay. Well, which Packers wide receiver would you prefer rest of season, Watson or Dobbs?
Still Watson.
I don't want to sound like I'm making a knee-jerk reaction here, but I think Dobbs might end up being the guy. I think he's just going to get good target volume and good catches from week to week. And hopefully Watson stays healthy. Hopefully Watson proves me wrong. I loved Watson for the season, but yeah. I see it with Dobbs. I think he'll be the best one.
Yeah, I don't want to keep repeating myself, but there were multiple reports in the preseason that said Dobbs,
yes,
projections, not but guesses by reporters, Dobbs would lead the team in catches. So it's not a huge surprise that he's off to a good start. I mean, 18 points in 3 or 4 games, that's surprising, but very good start for Dobbs. Okay, anything to say? It's weird, Goff, this is going to continue his look of bad road games, but he didn't play poorly.
No.
13.4 points, early interception, then he played great, just when you keep handing the ball off to Montgomery for the touchdown.
Right.
And, obviously they're running out the clock. But, yeah, I mean, Goff or Love, 2 questions real quick. Goff or Love rest of season, and then what do we do with Josh Reynolds, who led the team in receiving again?
I'll still choose Love over Goff, but they're both in that mid to low end QB1 range. And you'll obviously feel better about Goff when he's playing at home. As silly as it sounds, that's how it's working out. And I still think Reynolds is in the flex conversation, probably a deeper league flex conversation.
Reynolds is droppable, and I would take
okay.
Goff over Love. I'm not going to react to 4 games based on how I had it ranked at the start of the season when Goff's already had 2 good games and still gets Jamison Williams coming back in week 7. So I'll still stick with Goff.
Love's had 3 great games.
Yes, yeah.
Jamie is clearly putting stock into Jamison Williams coming back, which is why he's saying Reynolds is droppable.
Yeah, I'm not.
Okay. All right.
Hey, one more thing from this game. A.J. Dillon, 68% of the snaps. Really?
Well,
Green Bay?
Obviously, Jones
was getting his hamstring looked at during the game, so I don't think he's healthy.
Okay. But he played almost all the 3rd and 4th downs. How many fantasy points did he have?
Jones or Dillon?
I mean, it could be either one. They both suck, but
Jones had 2.6, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah. Dillon had 1.1.
1.1?
Yeah, you don't run on this team. This team's got a seriously good run defense.
Oh, yeah, that's what it was. For sure, the run defense was why A.J. Dillon didn't have a great game.
No, not at Dillon, but Jones. But obviously, Jones not fully healthy, and same with Watson. Their snaps are very.
I think the offensive line's a bigger concern.
Yeah, they need Elton Jenkins back in a big way.
All right, Sunday's a big day, obviously. Sunday of week 4. We got a lot going on. So join us at 10 a.m. Eastern on CBS Sports HQ. You can watch that on the CBS Sports app. It's totally free. And by the way, you don't have to just watch it for fantasy football coverage. It's all sports coverage. I mean, what a wild card. Chris Towers last night was telling me about the Marlins. The Marlins, I think they didn't finish their game last night, and they have a half-game lead over the Cubs or something like that. And if they end up and it's not decided they'll have to, if it's not decided by the end of the weekend, they'll have to fly back to New York to finish the last inning of this game against the Mets, something crazy like that. But all these great things that are happening right now in sports, college basketball is getting started soon, college football, watch it all, or, follow it all by watching CBS Sports HQ. Highlights, gambling analysis, fantasy analysis, all free, 24/7 streaming, CBS Sports HQ. Watch it on the CBS Sports app. And of course, join us for our live stream at 11:30 a.m. Eastern on Sunday morning at youtube.com/fantasyfootballtoday. This is a great way to get your questions answered. 11:30 a.m. YouTube.com/fantasyfootball today. 90 minutes, no commercials, just your questions. Let's go to the most activated list. So we haven't done this before, but these are players who have seen the biggest increase in their start percentage from week 3 to week 4. And I'm not including Alvin Kamara. I'm not including, I think Brandon Ayuk is on there, not guys coming back from injury or suspension. So number 1 is Devon H. How are we pronouncing this name? I've seen conflicting things. What's the latest on A-Chain versus A-Chan?
It's pronounced. That's you.
How do you pronounce it, though? Because I thought Schefter said A-Chan, but then I thought I saw something that said, no, it's actually A-Chain.
No, Adam's right.
I'm right.
Schefter's right.
Oh. All right, so what do you think? He went from 2% to 64% started. Are you starting Devon A-Chan?
Just hit the damn music already. Don't you know what I'm trying to do here?
Name of the week, yeah! And it's the game of the week, yeah! The Bills hosting the Dolphins, and I couldn't fool Dave today.
First time all year, but to be fair, I was tipped off.
You were tipped off?
I was tipped. Well, two things. First of all, it's obviously the game of the week. But second of all, somebody sent me a tweet. Hey, Dave.
You piece of garbage. Whoever did that, you really...
They said on the show yesterday.
That really said that pisses me off.
Well, that's your dumb fault for saying something.
That's the name of the week. That's not cool. And I don't even want to do this most activated segment. So
of course not. This was a terrible decision by you.
News and notes.
Let's blame it on the cough.
Ugh, I'm not even coughing that much today.
Like I was hoping you were going to play the music while I was pretending to cough. Like I had this whole thing in my head. Ruined.
Yeah.
All ruined.
You could have played along, Anyway, news and notes. All right, I'll get Dave next week when he's least expecting it.
That's what I want. That's what everybody wants.
Yeah. Well, then why? Apparently not everybody. Not this one loser.
No. There's one guy that tipped me.
Sorry, I'm being mean to him. Don't do that next time. I'm just frustrated.
Well, just don't say anything.
Well, I thought it was going to be our secret with all of the listeners and viewers. News and notes. Anthony Richardson looks like he's going to play. Bryce Young looks like he's going to play. Deshaun Watson was limited with a shoulder injury. I don't really have much to update from yesterday, but the big quarterback news is Richardson and Young look like they're going to go. Garoppolo is still in the concussion protocol, but you guys expecting Garoppolo at this point?
Yes. The biggest thing is probably Debo not practicing Thursday.
Yeah, I'll get to that. I have it all by position. So just finishing up quarterback, we're hoping for Garoppolo and probably not expecting Carr. Yes on Watson. Running back, Saquon Barkley was limited. That is an update from yesterday because the Giants didn't practice Wednesday, but he was limited in practice on Thursday. And I do feel like this is going to be a very frustrating Sunday morning situation where we're just not going to know. But what can we say? I can't really say anything until then. If you know Barkley's going to play, you start him. If you don't, you might want to play it safe. Eckler, what are you guys thinking for Eckler?
He tweeted something with the arrow sign or the little graphics squiggly thing pointing up. I'm going to guess he's playing at this point.
Good.
All
Get
right.
Josh Kelly away from me.
Let's do it. Jerome Ford and Kareem Hunt were both limited. We're expecting them. What's the latest on the Ravens running backs?
Oh,
Gus is good to go, it seems like.
I've got to say, you want me to tell you the stash now or when we get to beat the waiver wire?
No, let's wait. Let's use it.
We got a guy.
Okay, excellent.
If you've got IR spots, get ready. Just go to your league page now and get ready to add.
Wide receiver Jalen Waddle will play, but Deebo Samuel and Juwan Jennings both mispracticed. Brandon Ayuk was limited, so we're thinking Ayuk will play. We don't know about Deebo right now, Jamie. Your thoughts? We will talk about this game, but it's the last game we've got.
I mean, obviously, if one of the guys is out, the other one steps up. Certainly George Kittle as well. This is an interesting game because, as we've noted, that Ayuk does much better against man than he does against zone, and this team plays a lot of zone.
Mm-hmm.
So just keep that in mind. But if there's no Deebo, it's Ayuk to the moon. So I wouldn't be afraid of whatever defense the Cardinals throw out there if there's no Deebo Samuel, and certainly the same thing for George Kittle.
Yep.
Okay, Jerry Jeudy was once again limited. Devontae Smith mispracticed with an illness. I said earlier that the Eagles were dealing with an illness in their Week 3 game, perhaps why they were a little sluggish. Jalen Hurts
coughs.
Oh man, it's been a real painful week.
Yeah.
And Marquise Brown had a thumb injury, so he was limited. Still expecting him to play, but we'll keep an eye on Marquise Brown. And that's pretty much it. Once again, Derwin James missed practice. Are there any key defensive injuries? I think DeForest Buckner missed practice again
That would be a biggie.
for the Colts. Colts defensive tackle.
Yeah, and he's a huge reason, figuratively and literally, why their run defense has been so great this year. I got a whole list. I would say the biggest issues are in Carolina.
Yeah.
Frankie Louvu. I don't know if I don't know if any of these guys are practicing, but if he doesn't play,
he was limited.
All right, so that's a good sign. Denver's run defense went from bad to sewer when Josie Jewell left last week. So I'd like to know if he's playing for the Broncos against the Bears. There's a couple of others.
Okay.
Lesser guys. Arizona's got some guys that might miss the game.
All right, let's do one question for each game. But first, a commercial break. Yeah, you've been waiting for it. Here it is on Fantasy Football Today. We'll be right back. One question for each game. We have 7 of them today. Denver's at Chicago. My question is, really? These teams? Offensive explosion? We're really excited about these offenses in Denver and Chicago?
One of them.
Yeah, Justin Fields is going to have a big game.
I was thinking the other one.
No, you go ahead and think that.
I will. Thank you. The Bears, we can talk about it later, but the Bears defense and offense are just horrific statistically, both sides of the ball. Not that the Broncos are lighting the world on fire, but at least Russell Wilson's throwing better. And I like him a lot this week. I think Russ is going to have a good game.
I don't disagree. I think he'll have a good game.
You like him better than Fields, Dave?
Yes.
Jamie does not.
No.
But just in general, I mean, are we ready to put stock? You could look at Wilson and say he's having a good year, but I would say that 10 of his fantasy points came on the final possession of the week 2 game against Washington. Much of that was on the Hail Mary.
Mm-hmm. That's fair.
Didn't have that just a Hail Mary. He's got, I think, like 19 and 24-ish points, something like that. I mean, I might be a little off. But
okay. Through 3 weeks,
if he doesn't have a good game against his defense, get ready for Jarrett Stidham.
Yeah, so I'll agree with that too. His completion rate is like 6 percentage points higher than it was last year. Yards per attempt is higher. Touchdown rate is way higher. Off-target rate is way, way lower. He's playing a lot better, and he's attacking downfield, which is exactly what you want to have at quarterback when you're taking on the Bears, who have one sack this year. That's how bad their pass rush is. And they haven't had any in their last 2 games, and their secondary is beat up to boot. We didn't mention Jalen Johnson and Eddie Jackson beat up in that secondary. I think the Broncos in general are going to bounce back after being humiliated last week.
I would hope that Sean Payton runs the ball a little bit more to get their run game going, because you can run on the Bears as well. So I really like Javonte Williams in this game too. I am curious because we're getting some rumblings that they're going to play Marvin Mims a little more, and his snap counts have been really limited for a player that has a huge upside. So that would certainly help Russell Wilson as well. And you talk about the Bears pass rush. Well, the Broncos should have a better defense. They have 4 sacks on the season.
Yeah.
So it's not exactly a team that's been getting a lot of pressure on the opposing quarterbacks as well. And they've made a lot of quarterbacks already look good that are pretty crappy in Jimmy Garoppolo and Sam Howell in particular. So I think this is a good game for Justin Fields. I think it's going to be the best game to date. I think he's going to have a top 10 finish. And I would start him over Russell Wilson.
All right, let's got to move on to the next game here, because that's the first game we'll preview. Minnesota's at Carolina. Alexander Madison or Jordan Addison? Who's a better flex?
If they're going to play Cam Akers, and after Madison's got some fumble concerns and a lack of explosive plays and has just really been getting by on a lot of work, I'm going to take my chances with Addison, but I hope that Madison can still hold off Cam Akers and be the guy there for Minnesota.
The hunch, and this was based on what somebody who's, watched all the Vikings games and pays close attention to everything that comes out of Minnesota told me, and this makes sense, is Akers is going to start working in on running downs, even if Madison doesn't fumble, but they're not ready to put him in on passing downs. So the hunch is that Madison will lock into passing downs, which is good because that's pretty much every down for Minnesota, and that they'll split rushing downs. But if Madison fumbles, then it's going to crumble for him. I like Addison too.
Okay. Seattle at the Giants. Do we have 30 fantasy point potential from these quarterbacks?
Yeah, yes. But you also have 15 fantasy point potential from these quarterbacks.
I mean, I struggle. I have Geno and Burrow.
Yeah, you're starting Geno.
Okay.
And I'd start Jones over Burrow too.
Okay. Yep. Would you start? How about which quarterbacks do you like better, basically? The Denver Chicago quarterbacks or the Seattle Giants quarterbacks? Which game is better for the quarterbacks?
Collectively?
Yeah, if you had to rank them.
Yeah, go ahead. Rank those 4.
Oh, I have both guys in the Denver Chicago game ranked ahead of the Seattle Giants game.
How do you have it?
Fields, Wilson, Geno, Jones.
Wilson, Geno, Fields, Jones for me.
Okay.
All top 15.
Tampa Bay at New Orleans. Other than Chris Olave, how many easy starts are there in this game?
You're starting Kamara.
You're probably starting Mike Evans too. Like, you've got to have some really good receivers to move him down at this point. He's just getting too much volume. And I think he's going to continue to, even with Lattimore playing.
Mike Evans or Tyler Lockett?
Lockett.
Tyler.
All right. New England at Dallas. Does Ramondre Stevenson get it going?
Define get it going.
Have a good game, Do you
for
like
him or for a fantasy running?
Do you like him this week?
Not particularly.
Number 2 running back.
Yeah.
Okay.
I had Montgomery ranked ahead of him in PPR.
I have the same question for Washington at Philadelphia and Arizona at San Francisco. Start them all and sit them all? Start all Eagles and Niners, sit all Commanders and Cardinals?
I got an Eagle to
You're not sitting James Conner.
Yeah. You can start with that. And I think you'd be hard pressed to start sit Brian Robinson in non-PPR. I don't think Dallas Goedert is a slam dunk in non-PPR either. I'm hating what I'm seeing from him.
You'd have to pick up another tight end and start over.
Yeah,
I might be okay with that.
Who though? Who's available right now?
Yeah, let me see who I've got ranked ahead of him. I know I have Hunter Henry ranked ahead of him. That's always been like the litmus.
He's like 78% rostered.
Yeah, Ferguson, Everett. I've seen Freiermuth dropped in some leagues.
I mean, Goddard
might be about it. I wouldn't start Kincaid. I wouldn't start Njoku. I wouldn't start Kmet. But he's outside of my top 12 in non-PPR.
He's going to have a good game at some point,
at some point, they will actually throw a pass inside the 10-yard line this year. They barely do that now.
Well, yeah, they probably won't throw it to Goddard, but because he doesn't run a lot of routes there. But you're right. They're not doing that, and they're just not really throwing the ball that well this year. But all right, yeah, it's just a matter of, for me in my one league where I have Goddard, I'm not spending another roster spot on a tight end.
Same.
That could easily be worse than Goddard. Okay, and yeah, so Connor, again, we brought it up last week. He's just, for now, every time he's been matchup proof. He's been game script proof. You go look at every single time he's had a tough matchup or a game where they've gotten blown out or were expected to get blown out. He comes through every time. I don't know why I just have this bad feeling about him, but
you probably had it last year when he had that
feeling. I'm sure I've had that feeling before, and he always comes through. So
with him, I have it almost every week.
Yeah.
And you know what? He comes through.
So would you start James Conner, DeAndre Swift, Alvin Kamara? How would you rank those 3 running backs?
Connor's third, but still starting.
Conner, Swift, Kamara.
All right, let's beat the waiver wire. Beat the waiver wire. It's you versus the waiver wire. Who's going to win? Dave, who are we stashing?
My favorite stash is a rookie named Keaton Mitchell, who's currently on the IR for the Ravens. He's an East Carolina running back. Undrafted, very fast, will have fresh legs, totally different type of running back than Gus Edwards and Melvin Gordon. I know that Justice Hill practiced, and Justice Hill coming back will probably put a cramp in Keaton Mitchell's development, but they need something consistent and explosive in their backfield. And I don't know if they've got it on their active roster right now. So if you've got IR spots, stash Keaton Mitchell. I've done it in literally all my leagues. And if he gets an opportunity at some point, you just plug him in. It's a good running offense and a good offensive line when they're healthy.
Makes too much sense for them to go trade for Jonathan Taylor. If he doesn't want to stay in Indianapolis, and this is a team that's been aggressive in the past, like, that's the obvious move to help this team and to help him. And I would love to see it happen.
I would too, but that would suck for all my shares of Keaton Mitchell.
The Jets play the Broncos next week, and the Commanders play the Bears. So we look at just potentially great matchups. I don't know if there's anyone. Maybe if someone dropped Jahan Dotson, Sam Howell.
Yeah, a lot of that.
Yeah, we're seeing that in everybody's home leagues.
We got 4 buys next week. We got Cleveland, the Chargers, Seattle, and Tampa Bay. You need to get ahead of the game here. So if there's absolutely nothing available on the waiver wire at quarterback, take a look at Sam Howell. Don't take a look at Zach Wilson, but take a look at Sam Howell Thursday night against the Chicago Bears. That might not be the worst idea. Let's see. I think, I talked about the upcoming schedule for the Chiefs and their wide receivers. They get Minnesota next week. So if Rashee Rice or whatever, if Sky Moore's out there or Kadarius Toney, if you want to take a chance on someone, if we see a bigger role for one of those guys and maybe they can carry some momentum, they've got great matchups coming up.
Hey, I got a question. Are there any players on the Browns, Chargers, Seahawks, Bucks that should be dropped now before they go into their bye week? We were asked on HQ after we were done with the segment by Jeremy St. Louis, one of the hosts, about Jackson Smith and Jigba. Like, what are you supposed to do with him? Do you cut him before the bye week and then, just stash somebody else because he hasn't been doing anything, or do you hold on to him? And I'm just wondering if there's anybody that you can think of who you'd cut now before their bye, because they're going to, even if they have a good game, they're going to be useless. I don't think Smith and Jigba is one of those guys, but are there players on the teams that I just mentioned who you can kind of snip now? Don't have to worry about somebody reaching to pick them up.
Yeah.
Like, is Elijah Moore one of those?
Elijah Moore and JSN are the ones that come to mind.
Those are the first two.
You do it on Sunday morning. You don't do it now. Depending on the waivers. Like
right. Unless there's somebody you really want that's still sitting there
right
on the ad drop list.
Sorry.
Does Zach Charbonnet count? I don't think so. But those
on a handcuffs through buys is always a tricky decision.
Right. So I definitely wouldn't do it with Charbonnet. I would with Elijah Moore. I would with JSN if there was somebody that you absolutely positively have to have off the waiver wire, with the idea that you'd go back for Smith and Jigba either next week or the week after. But I don't love that.
In terms of other players to add, you could always, if you have an empty roster spot, you could always pick up a handcuff running back. Tank Bigsby, 60% roster. Justice Hill is not even a handcuff. He just might be a guy who has a role. He's 52% rostered, although you just heard what Dave said earlier, but still not a bad idea to pick up.
No, he's ahead of Mitchell when he's healthy.
There are some other guys to add just in the handcuff area. You could also take a look at Jerick McKinnon. Maybe his role would grow a little bit. And I'll try to find some wide receivers if this would just load for me here. I got the spinning wheels. Anyway, I don't know, whatever. I'll just keep saying Rashee Rice. Wan'Dale Robinson. Wan'Dale Robinson's the guy you could add.
Yes, please add him.
Yeah. 11 snaps last week, 5 targets.
Yeah, that's the stat.
Yeah.
Good call in PPR. Maybe even half in non-PPR.
All right, Denver's at Chicago. Here we go. Let's have this Javonte Williams rankings dispute, because, Jamie, you are a lot higher on Javonte than Dave is. So hit it.
Have you seen the Bears?
Have you seen Javonte? That's the thing. Well, let's talk about context of who you have him ranked ahead of and just how aggressive you're being starting Javonte Williams.
I think he's going to score his first touchdown. I think he's still going to have a couple of catches, and I think he's going to go for 80 total yards or more. So I'm not fearing Javonte Williams because he's playing the Bears. I think it's going to be his best game to date.
I think the worry on Javonte, I moved him up. He's now a number 2 running back for me, but the worry is that he's still splitting a lot. He hasn't even played 50% of the snaps in any game yet this year. He's barely played on 3rd and 4th downs, and he hasn't been efficient. He's had a couple of really good runs, but otherwise, like, his positives are that he's physical, and that's it as far as running goes. But the main reason why I moved him up is because he gets a couple of catches each week. And as bad as the Bears are against the run, they are even worse against running backs catching passes out of the backfield. A little bit of that is aided by Aaron Jones and what he did in week 1 and Jerick McKinnon last week. But still, they're dead last in yards per catch allowed to running backs, yards after catch per reception to running backs. Defensive pass EPA against running backs is the worst by a mile. And there's room for him to get, you can call it 12 carries for 50 yards, 3 catches for 30 yards, and the touchdown on top of it. That's a really good game for Javonte Williams. And then you sell the hell out of him after he does it. So number 2 running back, good matchup. And yes, he could absolutely have his best game of the year.
Okay. Got to update a stat. So since going back to last year, the Bears have now allowed did they get to 19? I don't think they did. Well, going into last week's game, they allowed 19 or more PPR fantasy points to a running back in 7 of their last 9 games. They did not allow that last week, but Clyde and McKinnon both had really big, or all of the running backs. Pacheco,
yeah, everybody
Clyde,
did.
and McKinnon.
So they suck. They suck against the run. They can't get much of a push from their defensive line. They're a mess right now on both sides of the ball.
Yeah,
but certainly on defense.
Well, just Jamie, you have Javonte ahead of some pretty big names. You got him ahead of Kamara, Swift, Connor, Miles Sanders.
Yeah, I think he's going to be better than those guys.
All right. How about the Bears running backs? Any interest there?
I do. I have some interest in Roshan. I think this is going to be his best game to date as well. And I hope that this is when the takeover happens, that he's outperforming Khalil Herbert. But both guys should be considered as flex plays, given how bad Denver's run defense has looked. See week 3.
Do you think this is true, by the way? Comment from the chat. When one of Adam's players gets a touchdown, he says, hip, hip, hooray.
Oh, definitely. Especially if your kids are around.
They're finally starting to get into sports. I'm loving it. So Jacob Gibbs had an interesting tweet about the Bears running backs. It's that actually, if you look at game neutral situations or situation neutral situations, whatever it is, I think like 7 points or less is the score, the difference in the score when it's not garbage time. Khalil Herbert is actually owning that time. He is the clear lead running back in those situations.
Right. For all 6 minutes of those situations each week.
So Gibbs was making the case that Khalil Herbert is actually the guy. We'll see how it plays out. I don't think you want to start these guys, but
no, I wouldn't feel good about starting them. Like if there were buys this week, you'd start them.
Great DFS plays.
Okay.
I think Herbert is the better DFS play because I bet more people are thinking along your lines, Jamie, of this is the Rashawn.
I will tell you. Let's see what the projected ownership is.
Yeah. Tell me on that. First of all, how reliable has that been for you?
Very reliable.
Okay, good to know.
Herbert is at 1.2%, and Rashawn is at 0.8%.
Okay, so what the hell do I know? They're both
the dead heat.
Yeah. They're both losers that everybody's ignoring.
So wide receivers in this game. Rank these wide receivers.
Moore, Sutton, Judy, Mims.
I'll take Sutton. And then I think I have Judy over Moore. I do. Mims is after that.
So Jamie has Moore first in this game.
Yeah, he's third.
Third.
Yeah. I know who the Broncos are playing.
Jamie, are you concerned about Patrick Surtain being on DJ Moore?
I mean, a little bit, but as we saw, sometimes garbage time matters, and he's gotten 13 or more PPR points in back-to-back weeks.
They do not line up Surtain against the number one guy consistently. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't, and almost never in the slot. And so DJ Moore could continue to work out of the slot for, I don't know how much it's been, but call it a third of his snaps. I could look it up. And I think that Moore's a good target still. I think he can still get you around 15 PPR.
Which means you obviously like Sutton and Judy because you're ranking them ahead of
even more than that. Yes. Again, the Bears.
Who in this game, which wide receiver in this game is better than Michael Pittman this week?
None.
In PPR, I agree. Non-PPR, I'd put Sutton ahead of him for sure.
Yeah, I would take Moore and Sutton over Pittman.
In non-PPR.
In non-PPR.
Yeah, I have it ranked that way.
Who in this game is better than Tutu Atwell this week?
Who? Just Sutton for me.
Just Moore.
Who in this game is better than Devon Achane this week? Which wide receivers are you starting over Achane?
In PPR, Moore and Sutton.
More and Sutton. I just feel like I was cheated.
What happened?
No, like I mentioned Achane's. I hit the Game of the Week song because I just feel like I was cheated by a rogue listener. But anyway.
That was funny.
Okay.
I was amused. Well done.
Tight ends in this game.
You bitter young fool who hurts himself coughing.
Tight ends in this game?
No.
There will be some who play. I wouldn't start them.
And we've already talked about Wilson and Fields. Fields is the start of the week. These guys are low-end starters. We like them better than Joe Burrow.
Jamie, do you have the DFS percentages for those two?
I think I saw Fields is like top 5.
Okay, and Russ? should be right up there with him. Right?
Fields is 5.8%, but quarterbacks are always lower. Russell Wilson is 2.9%.
Okay.
Go start Russ. I know I will.
Denver's DST is a low-end starter.
I'm
Minnesota.
going to win $1 million.
Minnesota's at Carolina. You were going to share that with me. Stat of the game.
I'll buy you cough drops.
4 running backs have scored 15 or more PPR fantasy points against the Panthers in 3 games. That would be both Falcons running backs, Tony Jones and Ken Walker. This is a team you can run on. So it's just tough to trust Madison right now. But if Akers weren't part of the equation, we probably would like
top 12. He'd be top 12.
I don't know about top 12.
He'd be top 12. He would be top 12.
And where is he instead?
He's top 24.
Yeah. Jamie, where do you have Madison?
Yeah, low end number 2 running back. I hope he takes advantage of the matchup. Look, if he gets 15 plus carries and 2 or 3 catches, then he's going to be fine. You're probably still starting him across the board regardless. But it's just been very frustrating and tough to trust.
How many quarterbacks are you starting ahead of Kirk Cousins this week?
4.
1.
Okay. Just start Kirk Cousins, but
I don't think he has to throw as much. I don't think they're chasing points.
Yeah, let me just say, I understand Cousins this argument that he's going to have his best year. They have a 74% pass rate.
If you round up, it's 75.
I went back and I looked at the last 10 years. The highest I've seen is like 68.5 or something. So what they're doing right now is outrageous, the amount of passes they're throwing. It won't happen. And it's actually making me consider in a league where I just don't like my team. My IDP league, 1 and 2. I just not feeling it. I have Burrow, I have Mixon, Madison, Pickens. I have Jefferson.
I'll take Jefferson off your hands.
I'm thinking of trading Jefferson, who I still would take number 1 overall. So, but maybe this is the peak of his value just based on the pass volume. Like, he's fine. I'm not saying maybe trying to trade him for like 2 great players, 2 second-round caliber players or something. But just throwing that out there. Only do that if you don't feel like you can win with your roster. But yeah, it's just crazy how much they're throwing, and Jamie's thinking that's not going to be the case. And actually, this team's been very good against the pass thus far, Carolina. I don't know if I buy it. They're really beat up in the second.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to struggle per se, but I don't think this is a game where he's got to throw the ball 50 times. This could be a 35 pass attempt game for Cousins.
How about Jordan Addison versus the Broncos and Bears wide receivers?
Behind Moore and Sutton, right in the same range as Judy.
I've got him ahead of Judy and Moore.
Okay.
Also, I don't think that the Vikings are going to just run away with this one because I don't know if they're capable of that, even against Carolina.
Start TJ Hawkinson. He has 78 catches in each game. Over to the other side of the ball, Carolina quarterbacks. Bryce Young, it's going to be him. And that's, if I could say, there it is. He's throwing for 150 yards per game in 2 starts. So we're going to sit him. But what about Adam Thielen? Any interest in DJ Chark coming off a huge game? How about Thielen versus all these?
A fun DFS lineup with a young Thielen stack because he's so cheap, Bryce Young. And the Vikings are so bad.
Sure. Why not? I mean, we can't tell him this. Can't tell. Like, you wouldn't start Young over Burrow, would you?
I'm not starting Young in redrafts, but if he has a 2-touchdown game, which would not be surprising against this defense, and he gives you 225 yards or maybe more, then without vomiting all over himself with a bunch of turnovers, then he's going to have a decent enough game, especially if Thielen does what he does. Then those are the type of players because you get so many options to put around him.
Okay. So do you like Thielen more than all the Addison, DJ Moore, Cortland Sutton?
Yes.
Yeah.
I've got him behind Sutton, but he's a top 24 wide receiver. Even in week 2 with Bryce Young, huge target share, 18.4 PPR points, just not as efficient. The thing that I was most impressed with last week was his timing with Andy Dalton was impeccable. It was amazing. So I kind of hope that they get there with Bryce Young, but for now, he's the number 1 receiver. He's going to get a lot of targets. He's getting open. This old ass man is getting open. You'd love to see it.
So we're starting to learn a little bit more about matchups and what's good and who's bad and whatnot. Like, for example, Seattle's run defense is one that I'm really looking at. They've been amazing so far, and that's who Miles Sanders played last week. He had 9 carries for 24 yards and a touchdown. But Minnesota's run defense has been sneaky good because I'm also starting to think.
Sure, Jan.
Well, I'm also starting to think that when you evaluate a team's run defense, you don't count what DeAndre Swift does to them. Because like the way the Vikings played DeAndre Swift is just not, they're not going to play an opponent like that again all year, most likely. The way they faced the Eagles is the strategy they had. And they've been great against Rachaad White and great against Josh Kelly. And yes, those guys are Josh Kelly and Rachaad White. But anyway, I don't know that it's a layup of a matchup for Miles Sanders. But you guys are starting Miles Sanders. How do you feel about it, Dave? Are you confidently starting Miles Sanders? Are you nervously starting Miles Sanders?
Yeah, the counterpoint to your argument is you shouldn't count what they did against Joshua Kelly either, because he's awful. He just isn't nearly as efficient with his carries as 90% of running backs in the National Football League. I do like a lot of their players on their defense, but I think the Miles Sanders is still going to get certainly more work than last week. You know that he's got the potential to score, and he's caught a ton of targets this year, certainly by comparison to what he did in Philadelphia. I think I read somewhere that he's on pace for like a career high in targets, like way over what he's had.
Yeah.
So I'll figure it out and I'll tell you. But
he's averaging 4 catches a game.
Right. So
that's terrific.
Like in PPR, top 15 running back, no questions asked. Start him.
All right. Start Miles Sanders. Start Adam Thielen. What do you think about Chark? Some people are desperate.
Is Mingo definitely out? I know he's in the concussion protocol.
Yeah, there's no update that I've seen, but I would guess that he is. And even
I don't know if it
I don't care.
Matters so much, but I think in terms of the upside, the ceiling is certainly a little bit better if there's no Mingo on the field. Look, he's not going to get the same amount of targets because I don't think Bryce Young is going to give him the same opportunities Andy Dalton did. So he's not a bad stash candidate just to see what happens. And again, the matchup is favorable. So desperate situation. Like I have him in a league where I start 5 wide receivers. I'm starting him, but
Same.
I don't want to start him in a 3 receiver league yet. So I'm not there with him.
You got to wait for Andy Dalton to get back on the field, which who knows when that'll be. Guess the pace, the 17-game pace for Miles Sanders in targets.
100.
Sure.
Jamie?
100.
Higher.
110.
113 targets, 68 catches.
Yeah, it's a lot. All right, Sid Hayden Hurst, and let's go to Seattle at the Giants. In fact, I am going to Seattle at the Giants. Yes. Let me know if you're going, everybody out there.
Why? So they could catch your cough?
Is this the game Dan's going with you?
No, Dan's going separately, but I will be tailgating with him.
Nice.
Hopefully. We had a great time last Monday Night Football last year. So
why don't you guys run a 20-yard dash or something? See who's faster.
Because I have injured ribs, or I would.
Okay, why don't you thumb wrestle?
That is not a contest that I am interested in losing. Stat of the game for this one: all 3 quarterbacks to face the Seahawks have thrown for 323 yards or more, and that would be Dalton. Who are we talking? Stafford, Goff, and Dalton. They've all thrown for 323 or more yards. I know it's really hard
under on Daniel Jones.
Yeah, probably. But you look at what he did, like Minnesota last year. He had 2 300-yard games, and I don't know. I mean, this is why you drafted Daniel Jones.
Oh, you should start him, but I don't think he's going to get 300 yards.
No.
Yeah.
300 yards to Matthew Stafford is like 200 yards to Daniel Jones.
Right. Jones rarely throws for 200 yards, but he does,
maybe you should say 150.
Again, if you drafted Jones, I just struggle with this one. I only have him in one league, I think. Maybe I have him super flex too, but is it just a good quarterback week? Guys,
it's not bad. It's a little bit tougher when you're looking at DFS lineups because of who's not available to you because of the Sunday night and Monday night and Sunday morning games.
Yeah, like Daniel Jones.
Yeah, I mean Daniel Jones, Geno Smith would be great DFS plays because of what they would most likely be priced at. But yes, it's not a bad week for quarterbacks at all. So Daniel Jones is worth starting if he's your best quarterback. I would start him over Deshaun Watson, for example, over Dak Prescott, Burrow. So there's 3 guys that were probably drafted ahead of him. But look, he's got to perform better. He's got a pretty crappy sample size right now. One good game and 2 awful ones. And the 2 awful ones were against really tough matchups. This is not one of those tough matchups. And he did not play well against Seattle last year in Seattle.
They were a tough matchup. This is what I don't really understand. I think there's a history of this with Pete Carroll, of their defense is getting better as the year goes on.
Yes.
But they were great against wide receivers. They were really good against the pass last year, and they should be getting healthier with Reek Woolen and Jamal Adams playing this week. So I think, guys, personally, I think Seattle pretty much does what it wants offensively, and I think the Giants might struggle, unfortunately. I don't know how you guys feel.
Is that the fan talking?
No, it's just like the Giants defense is just not good. They have no pass.
Oh, that sure.
So
That's
I'm
fair.
confident in the Seahawks.
Geno revenge game too.
It is a Geno revenge game. Nice.
Or it's a Giants revenge game for Geno ruining Eli Manning's streak.
Do you like Jones a little less if Saquon does play? I think you have to.
I like him. I like him more if Saquon does play, because Saquon might be the best receiver. You know, and he just makes their offense so much more versatile and less.
Yeah, they're not worried about Matt Breida. They're worried about Saquon Barkley if he's on the field.
It's not nice.
I think this is a pretty easy game, right? I mean, Geno and Jones are low-end starters. You know, Walker's easy. Metcalf and Lockett, you guys like. Now, Lockett's only had one good game in 3, but you like
one he left also.
But I don't think he missed that much time, did he?
In week 1, yeah.
He should have had a touchdown in week 1 before he left.
All right.
And I feel like he was close to one last week. Maybe I'm just cuckoo.
You're starting Lockett. You're starting Metcalf. You're starting Waller. Yep. I would, in a deep league, give Wan'Dale Robinson, if you need a receiver, desperation type of guy.
How many snaps?
How many snaps is he going to play? I think like 30%. 30%. I don't know.
30%. So 18, 20 snaps.
I don't know. I have no idea.
That's kind of the problem with starting Wan'Dale. Stashing him is easy. It's starting him that's tough.
I hate to be a jerk about this. I'm sorry. Lockett has played 88%, 86%, and 81% of the snaps. So he has actually, this is kind of a bigger Tyler Lockett discussion than just this game, because this should be a good game for him. But this is what concerns me. I'm getting some Adam Thielen vibes from the 31-year-old Tyler Lockett. He now has 68 or fewer. He has no more than 68 yards in 14 of his last 15 games, including the postseason. So it's not a good sign for Tyler Lockett. I don't think it's something we should completely ignore, but this should be a good week for him. So the question is, what do we do about the Giants running backs here? Jamie, what are your thoughts?
I mean, you said at the start of the show, if Saquon Barkley, we find out Sunday he's playing, you're starting him. If he's not, then Breida is at best a flex. You know, he played 82% of the snaps last week, did score a touchdown. I mean, obviously you could say he didn't look great, but again, look what they were playing against San Francisco, which is a much, much tougher matchup. So he should perform a little bit better. The question is, did they see enough to say, okay, maybe we should give Gary Brightwell more touches if there isn't no Barkley there? So if you can avoid the Giants running backs minus Saquon Barkley, that's your best bet. But if you're stuck, then Breida. I think if Breida was dropped or still available on waivers and you're the Barkley manager, you just pick him up and say, okay, I'll play who the starter is, or who, you know, if Barkley doesn't play, I'll just plug Matt Breida in there. But you just hope that Barkley's out there.
Yeah, I'm with that. Guess which receiver in this game has 2 end zone targets every week this season?
Yeah, Lockett.
That's part of the reason why you're starting him.
So if I told you Barkley were out, would you start Matt Breida or Brian Robinson?
Robinson. Do catches count?
Yeah.
Robinson.
If I told you Barkley were out, would you start Matt Breida or Khalil Herbert or Rashawn Johnson?
Both of the very good.
I have Breida over Herbert and Rokoff.
You know, it hurts to laugh because of the torn ribs. So thanks for that.
Plural?
You should.
Multiple ribs are torn?
Muscle in my rib.
You should get a replacement at Bobby Rubino's.
Can go over some ribs. By the way, the Niners, this is what I'm saying. You said the Niners are a much tougher matchup than the Seahawks. I don't think we'll get anything will be proven if Barkley's out.
I don't care whatever stats you're going to tell me. The Niners are a tougher matchup than
I'm just saying they're giving up 2.7 yards per carry to running backs. We got to keep an eye on this.
I don't care what the stats say. The Niners are a tougher matchup than the Seahawks.
Remember the ice cream cookie skillet dessert at Tony Roma's? I used to get that every time.
I'm not saying, Jamie, that the Seahawks are tougher than the Niners.
I know what you're saying. I'm just saying, like,
All right.
it's a moot point. They both can be good.
Tampa Bay is at New Orleans, but first we got to take
Cal's
another
opinion.
commercial break. We'll talk about Mike Evans and his horrible history against the New Orleans Saints, just in case you missed it earlier this week. That's coming up, and also Alvin Kamara making his return. We'll talk about that and his pretty bad history against Tampa Bay Buccaneers. We'll be right back. Welcome back here to your Friday edition of Fantasy Football Today. We have a mailbag coming up. We're recording it later this afternoon. It will publish on Saturday in the audio feed. You can see it on youtube.com/fantasyfootballtoday before that. Tampa Bay is at New Orleans, and just to give it again, the stat of the game, in the 10 games that Evans has played against the Saints with Marshawn Lattimore, he has scored more than 12.8 PPR fantasy points once. He has scored single-digit PPR fantasy points in 5 of those 10 games, and he's been at 64 or fewer yards in 8 of those 10 games. So it's just awful. And like I said on the Tuesday or Wednesday show, I think, there have been plenty of times where he's gone into the game saying, you can't sit Mike Evans. Look what he just did. And it hasn't mattered. So where do you guys have Evans, the number 5 running wide receiver in fantasy going into this week? Where do you have him ranked?
High end number 3 receiver.
I'm there.
High end number 3 receivers, and not in your top
30.
Yeah. And that's a lot of respect to this matchup. Would you say this
There's a lot of history. You just laid it out. I mean, it's not just, a 3-game sample size, a 5-game sample size. It's pretty big, so I hope he can, outperform it. I mean, my gosh, he has maybe his best quarterback ever. So Baker's done a great job for Mike Evans. I just can't trust the history.
Yeah. Would you say this is the most influential matchup history in fantasy for you in terms of how it affects your rankings?
Ever?
Current.
In terms of historical? Because there's been situations where, great corners playing receiver and they've never met before.
I'm talking about one player. Can you remember one player against a specific team this influential?
Well, I mean, there's he's in year 10, right? I mean, this is there's a lot of data for Mike Evans versus.
I know, that's what I'm saying. I mean,
it's probably something.
This is as telling as it gets. There's another one, by the way, coming up later in the show. Another pretty long history of a player and a matchup, but it's on the other side of the spectrum. It's great history. All right, so that's Evans. Chris Godwin, starter sit. What do you think?
Can't start him at this point.
What if I told you that Godwin has a higher average against the Saints in the last 9 meetings than Evans does? Would that make you want to start Godwin over Evans?
Not until I see a better connection between him and Baker Mayfield.
So, and that's why I kind of want to play devil's advocate with Mike Evans, is that he's averaging 9.3 targets per game. Are we just to believe that that's going to shrivel to 4 or 5 targets because they're playing the Saints? Like the Bucs are going to know that going in?
I mean, look, you got lucky last week with the touchdown against the Eagles, and he's not exactly consistently over 100 yards receiving. So you're getting saved by his yardage. You're getting touchdowns. And so it's been great. He scored 3 straight games, but at some point, if he has a 50 or 60 yard outing and 4 catches, despite 9 targets, and doesn't score, that's a pretty crappy stat line.
And if that's going to happen, wouldn't it make sense for it to happen when he's on the road against a team that has schemed against him very well for a long period of time?
If he was struggling coming into this week,
he wouldn't be ranked.
He would not be ranked.
Right, exactly. And it is a good point, Jamie, that Evans has had 66 yards against Minnesota on 10 targets, 60 yards against Philadelphia on 10 targets. That's bad. Right. When he scored the touchdown. He crushed Chicago, 171 yards to the touchdown. I'll remind you that he had a 70-yard catch, I think, where he shoved a guy out of the way, and it should not have counted. It should have been pass interference. Maybe it wasn't 70, but it was one of his.
It was long.
It was a huge catch.
No, but it's all about the volume. That's what's been carrying him, and he's getting his ADOTs lower. That's the difference from now versus years past.
Okay, so Rachaad White. Heath likes Rachaad White. He's got him 17th, I think, in PPR, 15th in non-PPR. I'll double check on that. You guys do not like Rachaad White.
No. I don't like a lot of the Bucs this week. I mean, the Saints defense has been really good, and he's had one good game of the 3. This is a tough defense. He's not exactly dominating in the passing game like I had hoped. Maybe that changes this week, but I think just from the standpoint of non-PPR is easy to bench. And in full PPR, okay, maybe he's a number 2 running back. Like, I don't know. I don't really love Brian Robinson. I'm starting Robinson over him in one league where I have the 2 of them in half PPR.
Yep. I like that. Yeah,
So
starting Achan is easy to do.
Let me, you know what?
Rachaad White too.
I think we've spent enough time on the Bucks. Obviously, you guys don't like the Bucks going up against this defense.
Yeah, his only good game was against Chicago, Rachaad White. And we've already talked about how terrible that defense is.
All right, so let's talk about the
and Todd Bowles hates him right now.
You guys do not have Jameis Winston in your top 20, so don't start him. But
I'm starting him over Stafford in the Superflex League. I'm happy about that.
Okay. All right, Alvin Kamara. He has not been good. In his last 3 seasons, he's averaged 2.6 yards per carry against the Bucks. But this Bucks run defense isn't the same as it used to be, I guess. So how much faith do you have in Kamara, Jamie?
I think the thing for me with him is that fresh legs against a team that just played Monday night. And yes, he does not have a great history, but he does have 4 total touchdowns in his last 5 against Tampa Bay. So there's touchdown potential here. Plus, you have Jameis starting, so I think they're going to lean more on their run game. At least give him opportunities and maybe make some, easy throws from Jameis to Kamara as well. So he's a number 2 running back. I think if you have him and you stash him for the first 3 weeks, you should be moderately excited to have him back. Is it the softest of matchups to start with? No. But is it one that you run away from? No.
6.1 yards per carry to the Bears running backs 2 games ago, and then 5.8 to the Eagles running backs last week. I don't think this is a matchup to be totally scared of.
Okay.
And they're giving up a lot of yards before contact, even against the Bears. 2.91 yards before contact per rush. Kamara's going to have a good game.
What's your interest level in Michael Thomas, who's been 11 to 12.5 PPR points in all 3 games, and Rashid Shaheed?
Shaheed is more of a boom bust type of number 3 receiver. If you're stuck with the hope that Jameis and his ability to just wing it down the field whenever he wants to leads to some, big plays or a big play or a couple of big plays for Shaheed. I think Thomas, you're just penciling him in as a number 3 receiver in PPR at this point. Not a lot of upside until we see it, but giving you that floor right there, which is perfect.
I'm looking up something on Thomas. Give me a minute.
Okay. He is averaging 0.9 yards after the catch per catch. So there's that.
That's not what I'm looking at.
1 yak per catch. All right. And would you start I'm sorry. Did you say Chris Godwin versus Thomas? Did I ask that?
I would start the top 2 Saints receivers over Godwin. Shaheed is after Godwin.
Not over Evans.
I would start Olave over Evans.
Sorry. I don't know why I was.
It's Olave, Evans, Thomas, Godwin, Shaheed.
Okay.
Trey Palmer.
Any interest in Taysom Hill?
In non-PPR, he's a desperation start at tight end.
Okay. What do you think about? I want to take a look at their schedule. What do you think about trading Kamara now? Do you think we're at the peak of his value, or just play it out? Let's see what happens.
I wouldn't say you're at the peak of his value, but you are talking about a 28-year-old running back with a backup quarterback with a year ago was terrible in terms of what the expectations were. And what happens when Jamal Williams comes back off of IR, if that happens, in terms of what the workload will be with Kendre Miller, maybe getting some chances as well. So if you're getting something great in return, like I had a league, in a league yesterday where the Bijan Robinson manager was 0-3 and did an on the block, looking to make a move. And I sent a package of Alvin Kamara. And I know I was underselling it. It was like Nico Collins, Alvin Kamara, and somebody else, just to see how desperate they were and how much name value Kamara would still have. And the trade got rejected. But I think if you can put some sort of trade offers to some managers that are struggling that would love to have a guy like Kamara back, the Barkley manager, the Eckler manager, the Aaron Jones manager just had a bad game. Those are the type of moves that should help you and maybe help that person also.
If you can get somebody to overpay on Kamara, it would make sense, but I'm not actively trying to get him off my fantasy team. Tell me if this stats mean anything to you guys. With Jameis Winston last year, it was only 3 games. Michael Thomas, 19.8% target share. 5.3 catches per game, yards per catch 10.7, 3 red zone targets, 3 end zone targets that either led or tied for the team lead. Remember, in 3 games with Jameis last year. Does that do anything for you when it comes to Michael Thomas?
I would say that if he goes out and has a good game this week, I'd probably put more stock into it. but I'd kind of want to see it play out. It wouldn't mean anything for me this week. But yeah, I mean, it's interesting because Olave, those were the first 3 games of Olave's career.
Okay. One more stat to give.
All right.
Last week when Jameis came in, Michael Thomas had 43.8% of the target share from Jameis Winston. 7 targets, 6 catches, 50 yards from Jameis.
It's interesting because he's the outside receiver now. He's not the slot guy anymore. So maybe there is something there. All right, it's worth looking into. All right, let's go to the next game here. New England is at Dallas. Stat of the game. These are the 2 fastest paced teams in the NFL. They run plays faster than any other teams. That is really interesting. New England and Dallas. Sit Mac Jones, Ramondre Stevenson, or Alvin Kamara?
Kamara.
Okay, I'll wait for Jamie to come back.
Kamara.
Kamara. All right. You guys, it looks like you're pretty different on Ramondre Stevenson, though, unless these rankings are not updated on my end.
I got him 20th.
Oh, okay. You moved him down. So you're not that different. Never mind. I did want to read something from Andrew Callahan of the Boston Herald, and this was on NBC Sports Boston, and he said this about Ramondre Stevenson. Last year, he's getting over 2 yards after contact. You touch him, he's still falling forward. This year, he's at 0.2 yards after contact. By the way, that's not what True Media has. True Media has 3.8 yards after contact last year, 1.8 this year. So even the numbers were different, but the point is the same. Yards after contact, way down for Ramondre. Callahan continued. He said this: I don't think that's going to hold up over the course of the season, but it's worth noting the Patriots did a strange thing with Stevenson this summer. They let him sit out like 4 practices. They said, go over there and run on the field. I asked him at the beginning of camp, in the middle of camp, and at the end, hey, have they told you why yet that you just get to go hang out at Camp Foxborough? He said, no, you'd have to ask Bill. He was genuine, so I don't know if he's playing catch-up, but he's not breaking yards after contact like he did last year. I just want to throw that out. We'll see what happens. I just want to throw that out as maybe like Josh Jacobs, being rusty and just maybe not getting enough work in the preseason. I don't know, but it's been ugly for Stevenson. So
could it be that, or were they having him work on his conditioning? Maybe he didn't come back in shape, and that's why.
It seemed as if they were treating him like a featured guy and wanting to just make sure that he wasn't going to get hurt.
It could be that too.
I think the thing you got to be a little worried about is the offensive line's been struggling for the Patriots from a health standpoint. They're getting healthier, at least it appears that way. And at what point is this the flip side of it? I know a lot of it was late in the game, but does Zeke looking better last week become a problem? Now, again, it was, garbage time against the Jets team that probably checked out. This is an interesting week because he's facing his former team. So how much are they, going to let him maybe get some additional work? It's not like they're in a situation where they can just do whatever they want to. Clearly, Dallas is a much better team here. So I would love to see a situation again, like we saw more in week 1, where they're down, pass attempts are up. And we saw, everybody's getting targets. We said this. Look at the target share as opposed to the sheer volume of targets. But 6 targets for that game, 6 targets for Stevenson in that week 1 game. And that's something I think that can matter here in this game against Dallas, is his role in the passing game. So I don't think you're benching him across the board, but it's a tough start so far for Ramondre. And we did say that the schedule was not going to be very favorable for the Patriots. So just something to keep in mind.
It's going to continue to be unfavorable too. So if he has a good game this week, maybe you think about selling high on him.
Ramondre Stevenson or Nico Collins or Tank Dell?
I would probably still start Stevenson, but it would not surprise me if those guys are better.
I think I'll roll the dice on the Texans receivers.
Ramondre Stevenson or Devon Achane?
Stevenson.
I do have Stevenson ahead of Achane.
Tyler Lockett.
I'd start Lockett.
I would too.
All right, you're not going to start are we starting Hunter Henry? Actually, you're not going to start a Patriots wide receiver, I assume. But Hunter Henry?
I think it's the same thing about Goddard to a lesser degree. If you picked up Henry and he's the only guy in your team, like I wasn't dropping Hunter Henry to pick up Luke Musgrave. Forget about the results. I wasn't dropping him to pick up Jake Ferguson. I'm not dropping him to pick up Gerald Everett. So he had a bad game last week. They did not have to throw very much. They're probably going to be chasing points. And I know Dallas is certainly a much tougher team against tight ends. Or at least expected to be a tougher team against tight ends. But I think you just bank on target volume mattering here and him getting a chance to get the ball in his hands and hopefully score.
Why are you guys so low on Dak Prescott this week? Basically around 20th. Have
you watched Dak play?
I think he's been off just kind of a weird start. I don't hold the Giants game against him. Scored almost 24 points against the Jets, and they were all terrible last week. threw an interception near the end zone last week, right? So, yeah, I don't know.
The first problem is the offensive line. He was missing 3 starters last week. That was something that I certainly should have put more stock into. The good news is this week, it looks like at least 2 of those offensive linemen are coming back, and it's the interior guys, Martin and Biadish. And I think that will help Dak feel more comfortable. It's still a tough pass rush. You know the Patriots are going to come after him. I could see myself moving him up. I'm not going to be able to move him into my top 15, but he's an okay start. That's as good as it gets because he is still making mistakes.
Patriots did a good job against Jalen Hurts for what that's worth in week 1.
They've done a good job against everybody.
They've been great.
Technically Tua, too.
They schemed against Tua, so I don't know if that's necessarily doing a good job against them. I don't think they're going to do the same thing against the Cowboys. But yeah, this is always going to be a tough matchup no matter what when you have Belichick on the other side, unless they're just completely stripped down from an injury standpoint. Yes, the secondary is beat up, but I mean, the way Dak is playing, not overwhelming right now, and this defense, I think it's worth staying away from him if you can. Like all the guys we've talked about. Gino's better, Daniel Jones better, Fields better, Russell Wilson better.
Yep.
All these guys, I would have said Jordan Love better. I would have said Jared Goff better as well. So I'm not going to get cute and start Jameis over him, but I think, top 16, top 17 quarterback is where he is.
What about Dak versus Burrow? If you knew the offensive line was going to be healthy,
I would start Burrow.
Okay. I have to make that decision.
Pollard start, Lamb start, anyone else?
The Patriots have typically been good against tight ends, so Ferguson's going to need to score. So he's a borderline guy. And I do think, forget about starting him this week, but if you do have an open roster spot, maybe just see what Michael Gallup does again, because Brandon Cook's dealing with the knee injury. They really like him. So whatever we think of Michael Gallup is different from what the Cowboys think of Michael Gallup. And certainly what Dak Prescott thinks of Michael Gallup, because he got targets and opportunities last week. So 14-team league, 16-team league, deep bench in a 12-team league, you can't get your hands on Wan'Dale Robinson, maybe pick up Michael Gallup.
Okay, Dallas DST is top 6. Start them. Washington's at Philadelphia. Stat of the game. DeAndre Swift is tied for the NFL lead with 3 carries down to the 1-yard line. They all led to Jalen Hurts rushing touchdowns. So he's been so close to having even bigger performances here. How much do you like DeAndre Swift? Do you like him better than Ramondre Stevenson, Dave Richard?
Oh, yes. I like him better than almost every running back we've talked about on the show today. I'll take Connor ahead of him. We talked about Connor. The obvious guys, of course, like Kenneth Walker, we mentioned him. I'll take him over DeAndre Swift. I'm toying with the idea of putting him ahead of both Derrick Henry and Kyron Williams and making him a top 10 running back this week. Jamie might already have him there, but he's been so impressive. And that offensive line is so strong that I can't help but think that he's going to be good. I don't even want to say what I was going to say. Never mind. We're just going to have good vibes with DeAndre Swift, and he's going to be a must start every week.
He's been awesome. It's just the frustrating part is the lack of touchdowns and the lack of work in the passing game.
Right.
So he's got to get you 130 plus yards rushing. That's just where to make him a top 10 guy. And so that's the annoying part about it. So he's got the potential to do it. And certainly the Commanders are terrible, as we've seen the last couple of games. But no, he's not a top 10 guy for me. I would not start him over those guys. It's like he's a great trap back,
Yeah.
He's just too good at it.
Yeah.
Where do you have him compared to Zach Moss?
Oh, behind Moss.
I do too, but I like him a lot. I love what I'm seeing. I've got him ahead of Kamara.
What do you guys think about the Commanders wide receivers? And Terry McLaurin seems like the tougher the matchup, the better McLaurin gets. And he was really good against the Eagles last year.
Yep.
16 points.
Over 100 yards in each game.
20.8 points. Yeah. He scored on Denver. We thought he wouldn't do that. Now that wasn't against Surtain. But you have any interest in any Commander?
No, they just gave up 9 sacks and he threw 4 interceptions. He's the first quarterback since 1985, I believe is the stat, to do that. That was a Warren Moon game. I know it was definitely Warren Moon. I think it was 85. To have that bad of a performance.
Wow.
And now he's got to take on this defensive line. Like, he's going to be running for his life. So I don't want to trust McLaurin. I don't want to trust Dotson. Brian Robinson, I think you're going to have to get him in the end zone, and that's going to be tough against this run defense. So while the Eagles' pass defense has certainly struggled in 2 of the first 3 games, they were very beat up in those 2 matchups. They got healthier last week, and it showed. And I think it's going to be tough for both Commanders receivers, Sam Howell, everything across the board with Washington. I think you said it best. If you're hoping for Sam Howell to bounce back, you pick him up and use him in week 5 against the Bears. But for week 4, no, hands off.
Okay. Robinson, look, we know the negative game script's not good, so you try to get away from Brian Robinson. He doesn't play on passing downs, and the Eagles' run defense has been absolutely elite. Logan Thomas.
Can you write a note and send it to all of us, please? Because this is like the 75th year in a row that Ron Rivera says they're going to use a running back in the passing game, and it never happened.
Yes, absolutely. Logan Thomas, certainly not saying to start him, but just so you know, Sam Howell, there are 35, going into last night's game, 34 quarterbacks who qualified, or passer rating qualified. Sam Howell had the 5th lowest percentage of throws to wide receivers, but the 3rd highest percentage of throws to tight ends.
Mm-hmm.
So just keep in mind for the future.
It's a carryover from what Bieniemy saw in Kansas City. And unfortunately, it's impacting Dotson. Dotson has 2 fourth-quarter targets this year.
Wow. Okay, start the Eagles passing game. You know,
Why?
it is what it is.
I don't get it.
And Goddard, you know, if you Hunter Henry or Goddard, who you guys have higher?
Henry and PPR.
Goddard.
Henry. Hold on, I've got Henry higher in both.
One more game. Arizona's at San Francisco. Stat of the game. Both Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk have bad history against the Cardinals. And George Kittle has amazing history against the Cardinals. How much of that matters if they all play? I understand if Deebo's out, you start Kittle and Ayuk, you don't even think about it. How much of that matters, though, if they all play?
You got to wonder if the lack of practice time for both guys will just help George Kittle, because that's where Purdy's been looking in his practice reps. So not that he's not familiar with all these guys and the system's not going to put these guys in place, but, you know, okay, hey, we have a play X is now thrown into the, you know, the script because Ayuk's not there or Deebo's not there. So I'm going to start Kittle no matter what. I'm going to play him in DFS because he's still relatively cheap by comparison to the elite tight ends. And like you said, the history's definitely been there. So I'm going to trust him this week for sure. And then it's just a matter of, if one of the other 2 guys is out, it's easy to start the one that's healthy. If they're both playing, I still give the nod to Deebo. So the defense and I think how they're going to operate man versus zone is going to matter for Ayuk more times than not. For Purdy, he had a under 200-yard passing game last year against the Cardinals in his lone meeting, but threw 3 touchdowns. So, you know, that's the type I think of game you're looking for him. And it should be a huge Christian McCaffrey game.
Guess who's bottom 6 in tight end targets per game, yards per catch to tight ends, and missed tackles against tight ends this year?
One of the XFL teams.
The Green Bay Packers. No, it's the Cardinals. Great matchup for Kittle no matter what. You'd obviously prefer it if one of the receivers does not play.
Okay.
My mom was an English teacher.
James Conner, and an author is a start. Marquise Brown, starter sit.
I would try to get away from him, but
gross flex.
So do you feel like we need to put the 49ers wide receivers in context here, where to rank them if they both play, if Deebo's out, etc.?
I think people know. You're starting Deebo. Ayuk's a starter in 3 receiver leagues no matter what.
Does this matter at all? That once again, the Cardinals are somehow being really good against number 1 receivers? I mean, it's the Commanders guys, and then it was CeeDee Lamb. I don't know if that's anything. It's probably just a coincidence. But this hasn't been a great receiver matchup necessarily.
How'd the Giants do in week 2?
Yeah, I mean, Hyatt had it 90 yards, and what's his name? Hodgins had a touchdown.
I guess maybe that does matter to a degree.
I don't even think it does. I don't think it does.
No,
I really think it's
probably more of a byproduct of playing zone and having the safeties kind of over the top of the number 1 receiver.
To me, really, it's just CeeDee Lamb.
Right. So Brock Purdy, by the way, we've talked about a lot of quarterbacks: Geno, Jones, Burrow, Wilson, Fields. Where's Purdy?
Ahead of Burrow, ahead of Prescott, ahead of Watson for me.
He's behind Watson and Burrow for me.
So you guys are going to tell me I should start Wilson over Purdy, right?
I would.
There's more upside for Wilson. There's a safer floor for Purdy.
Okay.
Wilson's floor has been like 18 points this year.
He had a 16-point game in there.
Okay. So that's a few points worse than what Brock Purdy's floor is. I would take the chance on Russ.
All right. We'll go for the upside. mean, Purdy scored about 25 points last week, and it was the second best game of his regular season career for fantasy. Okay, thanks for watching and listening, everybody. Good luck to you. We'll talk to you Sunday morning. We also have the mailbag before that. But let's go get ourselves a win. Get to 4-0.
Yeah.
Later on fantasy.
We're starting HQ on Sunday at 9.
Oh, right. We have London. That's
Yes.
right. Okay, 9 o'clock on HQ Sunday
9
morning.
a.m.
Early Edge Player Prop Show here on YouTube, 4 p.m. Friday afternoons.
Bad.
Make some money with us.
Bye.